Hi, I'm Pam Howard, and this is the Classic Tailored Shirt. In this class, we're going to talk about how to make a classic tailored shirt with all of the classic details such as a collar, a separate band, the shirt fronts with a pocket that's stitched on by machine, sleeves, sleeve plackets, and cuffs. Also, there's a yoke on the shirt that's a double yoke, which is also top stitched. And before we get into more details of the shirt, let me tell you just a little bit more about me. When I started to sew, I was 14 years old, and it was at the suggestion of my mother, who just asked the question that would change the rest of my life. Would you like to learn to sew? And I guess she had in mind the two neighbors who taught me to sew. Mrs. Jefferson worked at a menswear factory, and Mrs. Stewart was just a lifelong sewer. And any questions that I had, I was able to go to either one of them. And I was a kid of the 70s, so when I started to sew, we were using the bulletproof polyester fabric, and it was very easy to sew on. And even though you just didn't have to finish any of the seams, I became a stickler for details early in life. By the time I turned 16 years old, my cousin, who was 20, got married, and I was asked to make her wedding gown. And I'm lucky to have had a family and parents who never told me that anything was going to be too hard for me to do or ever scared me away from doing anything. And I just went in just blazing to make this gown. And it was a simplicity pattern, and I also made the bridesmaids' dresses for myself and my sister. And just recently I found out that my cousin found her pictures from her wedding, and she sent me a couple of those pictures, and I was able to see that gown again after 39 years. And as a matter of fact, I'm really proud of the fact that even though I'd only been sewing for 2 years, that I did a great job on that dress and also our dresses. By the time it was time to go to college, I went off to college in my town and majored in textiles and clothing, and I have a BS in textiles and clothing. And after graduation, I moved to Atlanta and thought that I wanted to be in the retail end of that business. And so I worked for a major department store in Atlanta, and for the first year I was the head of sales for menswear, boys' toys, and a little section they called Hip Pocket, which sold jeans. And then after a year's time, I got promoted to assistant buyer and was sent to the downtown office of that store. Well, what I did realize too is that I was more of a people person, and that job was in a 2x4 office with just a buyer. And although I thought that I really wanted to have that job, it was exciting and all, but it sort of didn't feel like me. So after that, I had a few other jobs, and eventually I started working for airlines, and I was an international ticket agent. So as you see, as with you, your life makes many turns, and you end up back to a situation that you needed to be in, but you had to make all those turns to get back. So I worked for the airlines for some time, went from that airline to another airline, but in between, I had this curiosity of, well, I wonder what it would be like to learn how to cut hair. So I decided, well, instead of in life wondering what it would take to learn how to do something, why don't you just go ahead and enroll yourself in school? So I went to cosmetology school part-time during the day and worked at the airport in the afternoon because I worked in international airline, and all of those flights are in the evening. And it took me 14 months, but I was able to get out of cosmetology school, sit for my license, and I got licensed, and I've been licensed cosmetologist for about 23 years now. So in between from me doing hair, I decided, wouldn't it be a good idea to get back to the original thing that you really love? So in 1994, I decided to start a business. And I thought, well, what are you going to name this business? And I decided to name it Pamela's Closet, as in, you never know what you're going to find in Pamela's Closet. So I named it that and carried on with the business. And the first vision was to be a custom dressmaker. And luckily, I found some dream clients who allowed me to make their suits and sportswear, and it gave me a lot of experience with tailoring, which I always have loved, and precision sewing. So just about everything in their wardrobes I was able to make. Luckily, I had some clients who had sewn for themselves before, so they had knowledge of very fine fabrics. They traveled with the business that they were in, so they were able to bring back nice fabrics to me to make garments for them. And even some of them, because they had sewn for some time, would suggest to me, why don't we do 5 bound buttonholes down the front? And I would panic and say, oh my goodness, how am I going to get those straight? So what I would used to do is to do a sample of the buttonhole that I needed to make, and then I had that down, and I went to all my reference books that I had collected over time to make sure that I was doing the method correctly, or I would choose a different method as opposed to the other method to decide which one is going to be the better choice to be able to get those 5 bound buttonholes just perfect down the front of that garment. And because I am a stickler for detail, as you can probably tell, I wanted to make sure that they were just perfect. I'm the one who tortures myself to make sure that it's perfect. Don't you do it. So over the years, I decided that that would be the business that I was in. And I loved it. And as I said before, I had some dream customers. And then we decided to move a little farther away from the city that we were in Atlanta. And I had the dilemma of deciding, okay, what to do now, because now you're at a distance from all of your customers. So when you're in business, you have to morph and change to decide if you want to continue the business or close it. And because I love sewing so much, I decided, well, you're just going to continue on. So I eventually decided that the best thing to do in the town that we're in now was to not offer custom clothing, but to offer alterations to the clothing that they had purchased. So after a while of doing alterations for my customers, I decided that it might be a good idea to teach. So I decided that I wanted to start teaching, and I taught locally at different fabric stores. And as I went along, I decided that I would go to an American Sewing Guild National Convention, which I did, of which I'm a member, proudly to say, Atlanta chapter. And I went to a convention and decided after that that I would like to try that. And I think in life you shouldn't be so afraid to try something that you never attempted. All it is to submit your name, whatever you're thinking that you might want to teach, which I did, and they decided that they would choose me. So in 2001, I was able to teach at my first convention, and that's where some of you may have met me. 2002, 2003, and 2004, I was able to teach at ASG National Conventions. And somewhere in between, I taught at Original Sewing and Quilt Expos. Also, I met some people from Threads Magazine, and I was able to write a few articles for Threads Magazine. Some of you may have seen those. And I was able to do a cover for Threads Magazine. I made the trench coat for issue number 112. Go through your books and take a look at those, because I made the trench coat for the cover. I was very happy to do it. It took me 3 machines to get that coat finished. Some wanted to cooperate, some didn't. Some would top stitch with heavy thread, some would not. So I had to switch back and forth with machines to get that coat done. And I was very proud of the results, and I hope that you like it too when you see it. Also with Threads Magazine, I'm a member of the Pattern Review, and I'm one of the ladies in the country who actually get a pattern, and we have to make it in muslin so that we can review it, so that all of you will know whether this is a really good pattern to make or what you have to watch out for when you decide to make it. So I want to bring all of my experiences to you here at Craftsy, the classic tailored shirt. With this class, I'm hoping that you're at least an intermediate sewer, that you have made some garments in the past, because this class has a few more intermediate to advanced techniques. I don't want a beginner to be discouraged to take the class. I encourage you to take it if you think you're ready, but generally you're going to be an intermediate sewer who's made other garments, who are now ready to do more advanced techniques for your clothes. So in this class, make it your own. As Tim Gunn says, make it work, but make it work for you. Okay, so I can't wait to get started with you. In our next class, we're going to talk about the pattern, we're going to talk about fabric and interfacing choices, and we're going to get started on our classic tailored shirt. This is Pam Howard, the Classic Tailored Shirt.